Fern, Stark, and Francis would immediately rush to Seer, the great mage, helping her up off the ground and tending to her wound, while Frieren, enraged and in her bloodlust, engaged in mortal combat with the Hood. Fern was addressing the wound that Seer had received, checking where she had been stabbed. It wasn't just any ordinary blade that was used. The ebony dagger in question was a much more powerful and rare of the dark artifacts used in the world. Many believed that it had simply been lost to time, and it would have been better that way. The ebony dagger was powerful, but not for the reasons you thought. It was more than it just being a weapon, but it wasn't something that was just used to kill in a traditional sense. The ebony dagger was cursed, and it was cursed with a series of dark curses. Everything from the small to the extreme. Curse after curse after curse was poured into that blade until it almost couldn't hold any more. The power of the ebony dagger, as used by the Hood, it wasn't simply meant to leave a mortal wound, but it was to leave a curse so powerful that death was almost imminent. You see, once the blade makes contact with you, whether you be stabbed or even just the tiniest of cuts, that's all it needs to take effect. From then, your body is plagued with every curse that was imbued in that dagger. Now, for mages, getting rid of and healing curses, that was nothing new. Sure, even the most extreme of curses could eventually be overcome. But the curses that came from the ebony dagger were unlike any other that the world had ever seen. Primarily because, to break away from the story and try to explain, being cursed by the ebony dagger is like akin to a puzzle. A puzzle that continues to change every time you try to solve it. Essentially, it's an interwoven web of curses, all conjoined and disproportionately put together. When you're trying to heal someone that's been afflicted by the ebony dagger, the issue isn't trying to heal them. It's trying to heal a curse that, in a way, changes what it is, forcing you to start all over again, all the while killing the person like a lethal dose of poison. If a mere human were to be inflicted with damage from the ebony dagger, it's almost considered certain death, because the time that it would take to decipher the indecipherable curse, as it was known, the person will have already died, the poison simply being too lethal and too strong to overcome, shaving off the lifespan until there was nothing left. Although Seer was in a rare case. Unlike mere humans, being an elf, her lifespan was far longer than most. However, Seer had already lived for so long. She may have had time to spare, but how much of it, they weren't sure. Before long, more assistants would arrive in the form of Kane and Lawin. They had followed Miss Frieren and the others, and now they got a chance to see firsthand for themselves the predicament that they were in. Fern would require their assistance, asking for Kane to get water and for Lawin to use her ice magic to help slow down the effects of the curse, and allowing for Fern to use her best in trying to break it free of it for Miss Seer. She was also trying to repel it in her own right, but it was still a complex curse and hard to break. While in the meantime, Frieren engaged in combat against the Hood, as their battle was laying waste to the entire forest side of Osbert, leaving it nothing but in disarray of destruction and chaos. as the two mages let loose their full power and abilities. Meanwhile, within the city of Osper, there were those who could feel the imminence of mana that was beginning to both rise and fall. Of course, while no one could tell for sure what was happening, there were some that had come to the conclusion that the great seer herself was getting involved in the conflict. But if that were the case, and if her mana was the one that was starting to plummet, then that could only add even further to the growing anxiety and the danger that was beginning to befall the city. Even the likes of Denkin couldn't deny it. "This is troubling indeed. You don't think," Reichsir would say. "If possible, it may seem as though Lady Seer has been dealt a critical blow." "But that can't be possible," Lawfin would say. "She's the mage of mages, the one only close and second to the goddess herself. If someone could actually bring her down, what does that mean for—" "Calm yourself, Lawfin," Denkin would say. "There is no need to lose hope. Can you not feel the other power that is starting to rise? You're right. It feels like Frieren. Could it be her?" "I believe so. Frieren is not one to be underestimated. She is a powerful mage in her own testament, who has lived far longer than any of us. There is no need to lose hope. All is not lost. Not yet, at least." In the meantime, Fern was continuing her best efforts in attempting to alleviate Seer of the curse that she was afflicted with. Of course, for both Shark and Francis, they wanted to get involved in the fight, but they had no way of helping at full capacity. With those damp seals still placed on them, they couldn't access their full strength. "This isn't good," Francis would say. "We should be helping Miss Frieren, but we can't do anything the way we are now. Fern, is there any way that you could get these seals off of us?" "I could, but I can't stop what I'm doing now. If I even slow down just for a second, Lady Seer is going to lose more and more of her life force. I can't stop now." "Damn it," Shark would say. "What are we going to do, Francis? We have to do something." "Perhaps I can be of assistance." They would turn to see one of the proctors from the exams, the man known as Ginna. "Mr. Ginna, it seems that a troubling darkness has befallen our city," would say a woman standing beside him. "Lady Sense," Carwin would say. "Frieren's engaged with the enemy. We're going to need all the help that we can get. His power is troubling. The fact that he channels the darkness of Dormammu." "Dormammu?" Fern would say. "Who's Dormammu?" Shark would ask. "He doesn't really sound friendly." "Indeed, he's not. He's a dark force from the dark times, in a way of speaking. Someone believed to be more of a taboo than anything else. But if someone was foolish enough to form an alliance with him, then safe to say they didn't come here for just a friendly bout. They've come for blood." Sense and Ginna would hold their hands respectively over the two boys, releasing the seal that had been placed on them by Lady Frieren, allowing them 100% access to all of their mana. They would now assist with Fern in attempting to heal Seer, afflicting her with the curse of the Ebony Dagger. In the meantime, Frieren would continue to fly freely in the air, as she engaged, trading strike for strike with the Hood himself. Although her attacks were more erratic than anything else. there was this feeling washing over her all over again. It was the same feeling she had when she learned of the deaths of both Jack and Clinton. The feeling she had when Hyder and Himmel died. Seeing Seer in such a state. The feeling she had when she lost her master. That pain of loss. So many times, over and over again, the people she cared about just died, and she was left all alone. No matter how hard she tried to deny it, no matter how hard she tried to push down that feeling, it would simply never escape her. Because deep down, the pain of loss was far too great. The feeling of watching those whom you care for perish from this world time and time again. It was a feeling unlike any other. And yet every day when she looked in the mirror, it was as if she hadn't aged at all. While the world continued to change around her over and over again, to the point where she was tired of it. While it was true that death was ultimately inevitable for all of them, even herself, to save her friends, to fight against the evil of this world, that was something she was obligated to do. And it was the one change she would gladly fight against. As for the Hood, his battle with Frieren was proving to be as ever more difficult than his fight with Seer. At least, the discrepancy between the two elven mages was definitely starting to become more and more apparent. If it really came down to just absolute skill, Seer definitely had Frieren beat. But in the case of pure destructive power, just overall mana, Frieren had beaten and surpassed Seer in that category long ago. So much that finally allowing all the power that she had kept suppressed to the forefront only began to show the great gap in power between the two of them, even with all of the buffs and preparations that he'd taken in beforehand. But still, he was confident that she would fall all the same. After all, if he had managed to get to Seer with the ebony dagger, then getting to Frieren would be no problem. However, what he couldn't have anticipated was her students. He had been so caught up in fighting against Frieren, he paid no attention to the storm clouds that formed above them all. And almost out of nowhere, moving as fast as lightning, Stark would come falling from the sky, no longer just wielding his mere battle axe, but now wielding Stormbreaker in hand, ready to send a crashing slash of powerful lightning magic. He had managed to land a direct hit across his chest. However, in that split second, he was able to counter himself, shooting and blasting away at Stark. Stark only had 1 minute in this form, 1 minute to use Stormbreaker without limit or consequence. And it took all of that time and preparation just to land the surprise attack. As the Hood was attempting to land the killing blow on Stark, he would be pelted away as a multitude of arrows would come firing directly at him. As Francis would fire from a distance before using the scatter arrow technique, shooting off a series of arrows with his own magic that multiplied into almost 1,000 arrows. Francis used the raining arrow technique to rain down a multitude of firing arrows towards the Hood, as he shot away at all of them with his magically enhanced pistols. After the barrage of arrows had befallen him, Francis would take the time to close the gap, using wind magic to increase his speed and to close the distance between the two of them across a large terrain, wielding a sword in hand as it clashed with the ebony blade. "You wish to dance with me, kid? Sure. If you don't mind, I'll take the lead on this." Francis would then drop to the ground, picking up another sword that he had seen fall. Now wielding both in hand, he used the two-sword style that had been made famed by his uncle. He was definitely able to keep the Hood on his toes, but all the same, the boy was simply outclassed. And, after a brief disarmament, he was able to kick him back with ease. However, this opening allowed for Frieren to continue her volley. Shark was out for the count, and Francis was still rearing to go, as both Frieren and Francis would work together side by side, with Francis fighting in close range and backing away in time for Frieren to take a few more strikes. And then there were the other mages that were starting to gather on head, everyone looking to join together and take him down once and for all. At this rate, it wasn't going to be long before they might have actually managed to strike him, and he knew he was running out of time. As the sun was starting to rise, so too would the loss of his power be, and from there he'd have nothing. The only thing he could do now was fulfill the contract. With that, he would ditch both of his pistols and clasp his hands together. And in doing so, he would cause the ground and terrain to be morphed and shaped to his will, looking to disperse everyone all at once as he let loose the full volley of his power, setting his sights on Frieren, ready to destroy her once and for all. His all-or-nothing gambit, to put everything he had into his final attack and to kill the mage once and for all. I'm really sorry about this. I want you to know. The Hood spoke to Frieren. None of this is personal. I'm only doing what I have to do to save the ones I care about. Save me your sob story. Frieren would prepare herself for the next attack. The Hood would clasp both his hands together. Very well. A gift from the depths of hell. The ground would begin to crack open as lava, magma, and fire would begin to brim out. From there, the fiery elements would take the form of a massive dragon, ready to descend and leave everything burnt to ash and flame. All of the mages that had managed to gather together in that space held up their hands to form a defensive barrier, attempting to shield themselves from the attack. Fern looked up to what was coming upon them. She had no doubt that Lady Frieren might have a way of stopping it, but even so, the casualties were just going to be too high. There was no way all of them were going to survive this, and then there was Stark. Stark lied on the ground far across from her, too far for her to reach. She could only use her magic to shield him, but she was still trying her best to heal Seer of her curse when she felt the hands of the elven woman touch hers. Seer would raise her hand in that moment, saying a silent chant with her shallow breaths. As she did so, a barrier would form to collide with the great fiery dragon that descended upon the area. The barrier would manage to protect the city and the people, as Seer, even while being afflicted with a nearly incurable curse, used her vast amount of strength to protect everyone, allowing Frieren time to charge her final attack as she launched it directly towards the Hood. He would create a barrier of his own, blocking away Frieren's strike, and managing to counter it, sending it back directly towards Frieren herself. He was then preparing to end this entire conflict. With Frieren being temporarily stunned, He used the magically enchanted boots that he wore to try to speed himself with the ebony dagger in hand. Frieren was a lot of things, but she wasn't renowned for being a hand-to-hand combat specialist. All he had to do was close the gap, fast enough before she could chant any sort of spell, fast enough before she could cast any kind of magic. All he had to get in was one strike, and it would all be over. However, as Frieren could see him approaching, knowing that she wouldn't have time, suddenly, just as the dagger was just inches away from her chest, an arrow would be fired, hitting him directly in the hand, causing the dagger to fly out and to land off to the side. He turned to see who had done it, only to catch a second arrow in his shoulder and a third one in the leg. Francis had fired the shots. He pulled out his gun with his one good hand and fired off a powerful magical bullet, shooting back and hitting Francis square in the chest. However, his lapse in judgment, his choice of vengeance, ultimately cost him, as Frieren would hold her staff and would blast him point blank, putting an end to his tyranny and an end to the Hood once and for all. Frieren would immediately race over to Francis, checking to see the damage that had been done, and immediately began working to heal him, along with the other mages and healers who were at the scene. The damage would be extensive. At this point, both Genna and Sense would be helping with Fern as she was attempting to undo the damage that had been done, now only exacerbated to an even greater degree. There's one way that we can break the curse. We're going to have to force it to be broken. But think of the damage that... Yes, it will do a lot of damage to Lady Seer, but right now it's the only chance she has of survival. What they were attempting to do would be very risky to an average individual. You could say that what they were about to do was akin to breaking a lock with brute force after being unable to use a master locksmith's pick in order to set it free. Of course, breaking the lock would do irreparable damage, but you would get the door open. In a similar way, to just fully break and annihilate a curse would do so much damage to the person's body that you'd flat out be killing them. If it were just an ordinary human, that would be the case. But elves were very strong and powerful individuals. What could normally kill a human could be little more than an inconvenience for them. All three would place their hands at the center of the stab wound, pouring all of the mana that they could muster into it, searching out the curse within her body, grabbing it in a stranglehold of sorts, and breaking it free. The dark energy would dispel from her body, but Seer would cry out in immense pain, a pain and agony she hadn't felt since the time of war and battle. And even worse. Eventually, as the sun would begin to rise, the fighting would come to an end, the monsters having been defeated, and the city secured. As for the Hood himself, he lied on the ground. His arms, they were no more. He had coughed up a massive amount of blood, and there was a large gaping hole in his chest. Frieren stood over him. No wonder they put a price on your head. You're really strong. Stronger than I anticipated. Save the flattery. Was all of this death and destruction? Was it really worth it? Did you achieve what you wanted? Unfortunately not. How could I? I didn't fulfill my contract. So I'm not going to get what I want. And what was it? What did you want so badly that you would cause all of this? It's not like you care. Perhaps I don't, but I still want to know. I had a wife. She became pregnant with my son. But there were complications. And sadly, we lost our child in birth. I tried to help. I tried to help her cope. But I didn't fully understand the depths that she'd suffered. My wife made a deal with Dormammu, attempting to bring back our son. But sadly, she couldn't fulfill her end of the bargain. I tried to save her life, but in the end, she sacrificed her own to save me. Since then, I've just tried to get them back. But there's no power. There's nothing in this world capable of working that sort of miracle. Not even the great deities can deem it so. Until finally, I was given a chance. They told me they could bring them back if I agreed to take you out. Taking out Lady Seer would have been a bonus. But why me? Because you're a threat. Your power, your potential. You've made a lot of enemies in your lifetime, Frieren. Old days. People want you dead. Ugh. I see. So that's why you chose to make a deal with Dormammu. Not really. I sacrificed the Norn stones I had been given to borrow some of his power, to use them to their fullest extent. But it comes at a price. When I die, I won't get to heaven, and I can't go down below either. I'll be forever stuck in purgatory. And I would have been fine with that if it meant I could have spent just a few years on this earth with the ones I love. What's your name? Not your criminal name, your real name. Anthony Robbins. My son would have been Parker. I see. You never know. While it's unlikely, I do hope you'll find your peace. Thank you. In truth, I was really tired of fighting. With that, Anthony Robbins, infamously known as the Hood, would pass away in death, and the famed red cloak and hood that he had been known for would slowly lift from his body and fly off. While this was a strange phenomena to Frieren, she didn't really care much to think of it. An enchantment, perhaps, returning back from which it came. There was no point in getting involved. Her main priority and concern was that of her students and everyone else, who thankfully, for the most part, were safe. Even Seer had managed to beat the curse that was afflicting her, although it came at a great cost. While the town would begin to recover and rebuild from everything that it had endured, the exams were canceled at that point, and instead, everyone who participated in the fight and survived were promoted to first class. Everyone except Frieren. Of course, Fern was the most surprised. If anyone deserved the rank up, it was her. But Seer had her own reasons for doing so, to which Frieren would learn as she and Seer would spend time alone in the dwelling at which she had collected so many of her grimoires and so much of her knowledge. How are you doing? I'm doing all right, Frieren. Although I have to say I'm rather embarrassed to think a mere mortal managed to afflict me so much. Well, he was no mere mortal, and you know better than anyone not to underestimate humans. I know. But still, it has come with a price. How? I don't have long for this world, Frieren. Originally, if I had to take a guess, I'd like to think that I would have stuck around for at least another 500, maybe another 1,000 years or so. At least that would be before I started going on the decline. However, the effects of the ebony dagger, it did quite more than I was expecting. What are you saying? I would say that at most, I have about 100 years left in me. That's it? Even for her, that was a lot. The ebony dagger took that much out of her? But I have gained a new trophy from my collection, Seer would point out, having now possessed the ebony dagger. Hopefully I can find a way of destroying it once and for all. It was one of the few cursed weapons from the old days that managed to escape. I see. So you know about the people who were after you. More importantly, that they were after you, Seer said. They're known as the Black Order. At least that's what they were known in their early days. They were dark ones, dark mages, people who did unspeakable and horrible things for power. I had believed I had wiped out their entire organization long ago, and that they'd be nothing more but a memory that would die with me. But the Black Order is now very much alive, and more so, you have become their target. But why? Why me in particular? Because they fear your potential. I've always known it. Even if you've never wanted to embrace that part of yourself, you have the power to do great things, Frieren. And I even believe that you would be my successor. Me, the next Sorcerer Supreme. Me? Really? Yes, really. Who else? Well, that girl in your party, Fern. She could potentially be a candidate as well. Because I imagine you would be someone who would turn down the position. I'd love to take her under my wing. Granted, she has a short lifespan compared to most others, but I like to think I could get her into shape in time. She has way more potential than you're giving her credit for, Miss Seer. But I don't know if I could be the one. I don't know if I should be. But you are. Whether you like it or not, it seems you are the more popular one around these parts, and the one that the Black Order will likely set their sights on as you travel. I would say that your journey was already going to be perilous enough, especially since you plan to try to go back to heaven. But I want to see the potential within you be fully realized. That's specifically why I won't grant you the rank of first class. I want to see how you continue to grow in this world, what you will gain for yourself. It could be far greater than anything I could ever give you. That's fine. It's your choice to make, your organization. As Frieren was preparing to leave, though, she would turn back to Seer. I promise I'll come back to see you again. I'm sure you will. Although, unfortunately, it will probably be our last time. So, promise me this. The next time I see you, I want to see just how much you've grown. And I want to really see you reach your potential, Frieren. I promise I'll do my best. As Frieren left, she would visit with Fern, Francis, and Stark, who were all recovering from the battle. For Stark, to have to go all out and use Stormbreaker once again and in such a way, well, he could definitely feel that he had gotten stronger. But he knew he'd have to get better. He wanted to get to the point where he could be like his master, Eisen, to be able to wield Stormbreaker for more than just a measly minute. But hopefully he could get so strong, he might not even have to call on it that often at all. And then there was Fern. She was now certified for first class, but her skills as a mage still needed a lot of work, especially for the challenges up ahead. And then finally there was Francis. He had improved, yes, but there was still so much more for him. His skills, there were higher heights for him to climb. If he was ever going to be strong enough to face the man that took his father's life. All of them had their own goals, their own personal ideals that they wanted to achieve. And for Frieren, she saw the ones that she would have to look after. As she finally reconvened with them all, they would ask where she had gone, what she was doing, why she hadn't been given the rank of first class. But ultimately, it was no big deal for her. For now, Fern had gotten the certification, and that was good enough. It was more than enough. They would help out with the reconstruction and with the rebuilding of various parts of Osper, before eventually gathering their supplies and setting off from the great mage city of the north. As the four would leave Osper in the distance, continuing on in their journey, they looked to the future with hope and with optimism, knowing that whatever it had to offer, whatever challenges that might await. It were challenges that they would overcome together. So, where to now? Frieren would say. I believe the next leg of our journey lies somewhere in the east. The east? Frieren would ask. Indeed, that was the next leg of our journey. At least, it was when I was in the hero party long ago. But what exactly could be to the east? Stark would ask. Oh, just another city. One far greater than that of Osper. Although, the road there will definitely not be for the faint of heart. So, I hope that you aren't too scared. Scared? I'm not scared at all. I mean, I just hope that we, don't get in any situations that are way over our head. I mean, fighting a whole city full of monsters and undead. Can we try to do something just a little bit normal? Now. If we just did normal stuff, what kind of stories would you have to tell Master Eisen when you return? Yeah, you're right. But still, we should be careful. We don't want anyone getting hurt or worse, Frieren would say. We need to be responsible. Wise. He'll be alright, Francis said. We have each other. That's all we need. So, what's in the east, Miss Frieren? Francis asked. East? The city of Enid. That's what awaits us. And with that, everyone took hold of their bags, and they set forth as their journey would continue. This concludes Frieren, the Elf and the Archer. What if Frieren trained Hawkeye? Season 1, Part 12. As always, when we get to the end of a series or we get to the end of a particular season on the channel, I want to take the time to say thank you to everyone who has been supportive of this series. This wasn't one that I originally had plans on doing, and there was definitely a lot more that got cut out that I wished I could have kept in the series. But I do hope that going forward, I can flesh out some more to the story, and it can become one of the staples that you all will enjoy here on the channel as we continue further into the world of anime Marvel. But I had a lot of fun writing this series. Definitely enjoyed getting a chance to watch the anime Frieren. Had a lot of fun with that, and I can't wait till we get to season 2 or a chance to do season 2. I definitely have ideas for where the story can go next, and a lot that can come out of the story going forward. So I definitely have a lot more in store, a lot of things planned, and I can't wait to show you all and to explore more of this universe in particular. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with Power Core Productions and Podcastings, thanking you for watching Frieren, the Elf and the Archer. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.